All right, so I think I'm recording. Let's take a look at these problems. We've been looking at quadratic equations, and there's different techniques to solve quadratic equations, and one of the techniques is called completing the square. So before we jump in and just start solving problems by completing the square, you walk before you run, and you just get an idea of the technique and the steps involved. And one of the steps here, when you have completing the square, is to focus on that word square, is to rewrite this trinomial as a perfect square. In other words, to factor it so that we have something times itself. Well, there's a pattern that we can establish here. This c will always be, you take the middle term, if this is in standard form, the coefficient, that negative 14, you take half of it, and you square it. Okay, well, what will that do? That gives us a negative 7 squared, which is 49. So that means if this c were 49, we would have x squared minus 14x plus 49, and that factors to x minus 7 squared. Notice how half of negative 14 was negative 7. All right, let's come over to this next one. This constant term, what does it need to be in order to have this be a perfect square? We take the coefficient that's in front of our linear term, divide it by 2, and square it. Well, last time we had an even number, so it was easy to divide it by 2. This time we have an odd number. I'm just going to keep this as an improper fraction. So 27 times 27 is 729, and 2 times 2 is 4. So that means that if we have this x squared plus 27 plus this ugly fraction, that factors to x plus 27 divided by 2 squared. The negative 14, half of negative 14 was negative 7. Half of positive 27 is just 27 over 2. Let's come up to this next one. It's also an odd value. This negative 5. We take half of it and square it. If it were an even number, it'd be an integer value, and students like that better. But all we're doing is multiplying it by itself. This was negative 7 times a negative 7. It's got us 49. This is negative 5 halves times negative 5 halves, and that gets us 25 over 4. So we have this, if c were replaced with 25 over 4, we would have this trinomial, and we can factor this trinomial to where half of that middle term, and then square it. So that's the pattern. It's not as difficult as people think, but there's anxiety about these fractions. When that middle term is an odd number, students just have that mental block against fractions. If it's an even number like negative 14, they go through it and they have no problem. But when it's an odd number, you sometimes have a problem with it. You're going to have to get over that. Practice it well enough that it's a number just like any other number. Talk to you later. Bye.